Good morning, students. I miss you guys. I hope you are all doing well. Today, we're going to do a guidance lesson that focuses on a character trait that we talked about while we were still in school. And I'm going to see if you can remember about that character trait. But first, we're going to read the book. It's called Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. Sylvester Duncan lived with his mom and dad at Acorn Road in Oatsdale. One of his hobbies was collecting pebbles of unusual shape and color. On a rainy Saturday during vacation, he found a quite extraordinary one. It was flaming red, shiny, and perfectly round, like a marble. As he was studying this remarkable pebble, he began to shiver, probably from excitement, and the rain felt cold on his back. "I wish it would stop raining," he said. To his great surprise, the rain stopped. It didn't stop gradually, like rains usually do. It ceased, which means it stopped immediately. The drops vanished on the way down, the clouds disappeared, everything was dry, and the sun was shining as if the rain had never existed. In all his young life, Sylvester had never had a wish gratified so quickly. It struck him that magic must be at work, and he guessed that the magic must be in the remarkable-looking red pebble, where indeed it was. To make a test, he put the pebble on the ground and said, "I wish it would rain again." Nothing happened. But when he said the same thing, holding the pebble in his hoof, the sky turned black, there was lightning and a clap of thunder, and the rain came pouring down. "What a lucky day this is," thought Sylvester. "From now on, I can have anything I want. My father and mother can have anything that they want. My relatives, my friends, and anybody at all can have everything anybody wants." He wished the sunshine back in the sky, and he wished a wart on his left hind fetlock would disappear. And it did. And he started home, eager to amaze his father and mother with his magic pebble. He could hardly wait to see their faces. Maybe they wouldn't even believe him at first. As he was crossing Strawberry Hill, thinking of some of the many, many things that he could wish for, he was startled to see a mean, hungry lion looking right at him from behind some tall grass. He was frightened. If he hadn't been so frightened, he could have made the lion disappear, or he could have wished himself safe at home with his mom and his dad. He could have wished the lion would turn into a butterfly, or a daisy, or a gnat. He could have wished many things, but he panicked, and he couldn't think carefully. "I wish I were a rock," he said, and he became a rock. The lion came bounding over, sniffed the rock 100 times, walked around and around it, and went away, confused, perplexed, puzzled, and bewildered. "I saw that little donkey as clear as day. Maybe I'm going crazy," he muttered. And there was Sylvester, a rock on Strawberry Hill, and the magic pebble lying right beside him, and he was unable to pick it up. "Oh, how I wish I were myself again," he thought, but nothing happened. He had to be touching the pebble to make the magic work, but there was nothing that he could do about it. His thoughts began to race like mad. He was scared and worried. Being helpless, he felt hopeless. He imagined all the possibilities, and eventually he realized that his only chance of becoming himself again was for someone to find the red pebble and to wish that the rock next to it would be a donkey. Someone would surely find the red pebble. It was so bright and shiny. But what on earth would make them wish that a rock were a donkey? The chance was 1 in a billion at best. Sylvester fell asleep. What else could he do? Night came with many stars. Meanwhile, back at home, Mr. and Mrs. Duncan paced the floor frantic with worry. Sylvester had never come home later than dinner. Where could he be? They stayed up all night wondering what had happened, expecting that Sylvester would turn up by morning. But Sylvester didn't. Of course, Mrs. Duncan cried a lot, and Mr. Duncan did his best to soothe her. They both longed to have their son back with them. "I will never scold Sylvester again as long as I live," said Mrs. Duncan, "no matter what he does." At dawn, they went about asking all of the neighbors. They talked to all the children, the puppies, the piglets, the kittens, the colts. No one had ever seen Sylvester since the day before yesterday. They even went to the police, but the police could not find their son. All the dogs in Oatsdale went searching for him. They sniffed behind every rock and tree and blade of grass, into every nook and gully of the neighborhood and beyond, but found not a scent of him. They sniffed the rock on Strawberry Hill, but it smelled like a rock. It didn't smell like Sylvester. After a month of searching the same places over and over again, and inquiring of the same animals over and over again, Mr. and Mrs. Duncan no longer knew what to do. They concluded that something dreadful must have happened, and that they would probably never see their son again, though all the time he was less than a mile away. They tried their best to be happy, to go about their usual ways, but their usual ways included Sylvester, and they were always reminded of him. They were miserable. Life had no meaning for them anymore. Night followed day, and day followed night, over and over again. Sylvester on the hill woke up less and less often. When he was awake, he was only hopeless and unhappy. He felt he would be a rock forever, and he tried to get used to it. He went into an endless sleep. The days grew colder. Fall came with the leaves changing color. Then the leaves fell, and the grass bent to the ground. Then it was winter. The winds blew this way and that. It snowed. Mostly the animals stayed indoors, lying on the food that they had all stored up. One day a wolf sat on the rock that was Sylvester and howled because he was hungry. Then the snows melted. The earth warmed up in the spring sun, and things budded. Leaves were on the trees again. Flowers showed their young faces. One day in May, Mr. Duncan insisted that his wife go with him on a picnic. "Let's cheer up," he said. "Let us try to live again and be happy, even though Sylvester, our angel, is no longer with us." They went to Strawberry Hill. Mrs. Duncan sat down on the rock. The warmth of his own mother setting on him woke Sylvester up from his deep winter sleep. How he wanted to shout, "Oh, Mother, Father, it's me, Sylvester. I'm right here." But he couldn't talk. He had no voice. Mr. Duncan walked aimlessly around, while Mrs. Duncan sat on the picnic food on the rock. Alfalfa sandwiches, pickled oats, and sassafras salad. Suddenly, Mr. Duncan saw the red pebble. "Oh, what a fantastic pebble," he said. Sylvester would have loved it for his collection, and he put the pebble on the rock. They sat down to eat. Sylvester was now as wide awake as a donkey that was a rock could possibly be. Mrs. Duncan felt some mysterious excitement. "You know, Father," she said suddenly, "I have the strangest feeling that our dear Sylvester is still alive and not far away." I am, Sylvester wanted to shout, but he couldn't. If only he had realized that the pebble resting on his back was the magic pebble. "Oh, how I wish you were here with us on this lovely May day," said Mrs. Duncan. Mr. Duncan looked sadly at the ground. "Don't you wish it too, Father?" she said. He looked at her as if to say, "How could you ask such a question?" Mr. and Mrs. Duncan looked at each other with great sorrow. "I wish I were myself again. I wish I were my real self again," thought Sylvester. And in less than an instant, he was. You can imagine the scene that followed. The hugs, the kisses, the questions, the answers, the loving looks, and the fond exclamations. When they had eventually calmed down a bit and had gotten home, Mr. Duncan put the magic pebble in an iron safe. Someday they might want to use it, but really for now, what more could they wish for? They had all that they wanted. So Sylvester turned himself into a rock because he panicked and he didn't know what to say, and he said, "I wish I were a rock," when the lion was after him. And he was a rock for a long time, wasn't he? How long was he a rock? That's right, for several seasons, because they said that winter came and it started to snow. And so it would have been really easy for Sylvester to give up and just think, "I'm going to be a rock forever." But he didn't give up because he had a character trait that we talked about. What is that character trait? It's a big, long word, and it starts with the word P. Think about it. Who knows what that is? You're right. It's perseverance. And perseverance means that you keep trying when something is challenging and you don't give up. Sylvester didn't give up. He kept thinking to himself and saying to himself, "I wish I were a rock. I wish I were my own self again." You know, he kept not giving up hope. And it paid off. Because when his mom and dad came to visit him and they set the pebble on top of himself, which when he was the rock, he kept thinking, "I wish I were myself again. I wish I were myself again." And he turned into himself again because of the magic pebble. Well, we don't have magic pebbles, but we do have something kind of magical in every one of us. And that's the character trait of perseverance. So when things get hard and you want to give up and you want to quit trying, I want you to remember Sylvester and the magic pebble. And Sylvester didn't give up. He kept thinking positive thoughts. He kept trying, and eventually it paid off because he persevered and he became himself again. So I want you to remember that we all need to have perseverance. We all need to try, especially when things are tough, and we need to not give up. And we need to remember that magical things can happen when we persevere and work hard and not give up. So let's all work, even when we're at home, on perseverance. All right, that was our lesson for today. I will see you after a while. Bye. Miss you.